Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Be sure to join our network and get involved in the work that we are doing. If you can, please like and subscribe. It helps us build this channel, which serves as a platform to communicate with our members. This video is part of our 2025 annual conference. We're looking for folks to be on the conference planning committee. Please email info@housingoregon.org.
You joining us after lunch. I know there's always a little bit of after lunch lull, so luckily these folks are much more entertaining to listen to than I am. So I'm just going to do some quick moderating and then pass it off. But today we're going to be talking about designing inclusive housing. And we'll kind of start at a high level talking about some of the work that Community Vision does, as well as principles of universal design, and then we'll get into a case study. Looking at integrating individuals with IDDs, so intellectual and developmental disabilities, students and seniors into a shared community. So these are the three organizations represented here today. We've got Community Vision, a nonprofit, provides services, education, and advocacy for people with disabilities. Fourth Point Forward, nonprofit, developer, equity-focused, community-focused in Vancouver, Washington, and then Access architectural firm based in Vancouver, Washington, that is focused on outcome-based design and evidence-based design. And so this is the folks we have on the panel here today. Myself, Brendan Sanchez, principal and founder of Access Architecture. We've got Jennifer Knapp, executive director of Community Vision, Paul Burgess, executive director of Fourth Point Forward, and Alexis Richbart, senior designer at Access, who also worked on the project that we will be looking at today. So with that, I will pass it over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Brendan. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am here to just kind of provide a little bit of context of why this matters, why we want to talk about universal design and designing for some of these populations. So if you want to, I could do it myself. Thank you, perfect. So just a little bit about our organization. Community Vision has worked at this intersection of housing and disability for over 30 years. Our mission is to provide services, education, and advocacy to support people with disabilities to direct their own lives. And so we spent a lot of time learning about what people want, and many times this population in particular, folks with disabilities, are overlooked when it comes to housing. There's a lot of belief that they can't do it. And so projects like this are really exciting to see that there are alternative ways to, there's room in the front, don't be shy, come on up, that's right, yeah! Not at all, do it, come in. Nobody wants to stand, I mean, unless you want to stand, then of course you can, but we'll just make that happen. Okay, cool. So, so I am just, in full disclosure, I am just an interloper on this conversation. So just to providing some context, but so excited to learn more about this project as well. So again, Community Vision, what we focus on is actually providing those direct supports to people with disabilities so that they can live on their own. So we have support staff who will actually go out and work with people in their homes, over 100 folks, help people get jobs, connect folks to technology, because that is increasingly becoming more critical to be able to live on your own. And then we actually have a program where we support people to connect to housing. And so I am here to give a little context about why projects like this matter. And so since our existence, when we ask folks with disabilities what they want, the first thing they often say is to be able to live it on their own. Over and over and over again. And unfortunately, our systems and our world has not been set up for people to do that well. There's some barriers that many populations experience, but folks with disabilities have even more. And so just, again, why we're talking about disability with this project is super cool in that it's actually looking at multiple different populations. But one of them is folks with disabilities, also seniors and students. And turns out there's lots of commonalities in those two groups, particularly people with disabilities and seniors. And so just a little note on disability. When we talk about disability more broadly, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, it is a condition that substantially limits major life functions. That's what the ADA says. And here today, we're going to be talking about a subset of the larger disability group, which is people with IDD, or intellectual and developmental disabilities. So think things like autism or Down syndrome. These are disabilities that people experience throughout their whole life, and often have been told throughout their whole life that they're not able to live on their own because of those disabilities. So there's an extra special focus on that group, and again, they'll talk a little bit about the design piece of that. I am just here to highlight that part of why that group is a focus is because they have been underrepresented for so long. And to note that for folks with IDD, or intellectual and developmental disabilities, some have physical disabilities, so people might be using wheelchairs or walkers or other devices, and other people have hidden disabilities. You can't see it, you wouldn't know walking. And so that has been one of the challenges and opportunities with a project like this, is not everyone needs those physical innovations. Other people need different things, so they'll talk more about that detail. So, some of the challenges that folks with disabilities and older Americans in particular face. We all in this room know that affordability is a huge challenge. But for folks with disabilities, many times people are living only on Social Security income. And so they're not even at the 30% AMI, right? They're even lower. And so, again, for those of us who are in the Portland area, the monthly income that you need to be able to afford a market rate apartment is $5,000-ish, and Social Security is $940. So way under what people need to be able to live affordably. And then an added complication for many folks with disabilities is accessibility. So about a quarter of the population has some sort of disability. And that is a wide range of what those are. And 1 in 8 have difficulty walking. So again, 2 of the 3 of the populations that we're focused here, that is a common feature. However, there are way less accessible apartments than what is needed. It's really difficult to get a good estimate, so here's our best one, as 1 in 100. And that is because there are 2% in big apartments, like big multifamily apartments, there's a requirement of 2% of those units to be accessible, but that's only multifamily. That isn't all of the other housing. So this is our best estimate. Regardless of the actual numbers, we know there's way less apartments available than what is needed. And then a third area is stigma. So folks with disabilities, when we look at fair housing data, so that's what this graph is here, you can see that orange line going up, that is the percentage of complaints, of fair housing complaints, coming from folks with disabilities. Where the blue line is based on race, and the green line is based on sex. So while the other areas are going down or staying steady, disability-related complaints are skyrocketing. And this is over the last 20 years of data. And one of the challenges, again, we talked about this in a previous session too, is based on fair housing law, right? There's a good thing in fair housing that we don't want to discriminate, and yet that often means that people who need that physical access aren't getting it. And so accommodations are a big part of this challenge here, which is why designing from the beginning makes such an important point. So, given all of that challenge that we have experienced, we want to come to the table and think differently. We recognize that, again, I've just given you a bunch of information about disability, but also we have a growing senior population, many of whom are going to acquire disabilities as they age. Often what happens as we get older. And coupled with the idea of technology is actually opening up new opportunities. So people who didn't think that they could live on their own now can, due to some of our new technologies that we have. And then recognizing that the laws that we have on the books, the ADA, fair housing, we want to think of those as the floor, not the ceiling, right, of where we can go. Those are the basics. Those are requiring a place to start as opposed to where we want to head. And so today, we want to offer the idea of universal design. How many is that a familiar concept, the idea of universal design? That's, yay! I like it. And that has been something that, especially in this area, has been growing increasingly. And so the idea, this is Ronald Mace, who is an architect with a disability, who kind of coined the term, is that it should be usable by all people without a need for adaptation or specialized design. So it's the idea of how do we make it work for the most people at the beginning. Again, I talk a lot about disability today because that's often who we think of, but it's also beneficial for people who are aging in place, who are maybe learning English, who are looking for flexibility in use. And so that is it's one of those that we're really trying to show how it can be viable and work for a lot of folks. If you're interested in learning more about universal design, we have Community Vision worked with Bora Architects, a fabulous firm in the area, and we developed a kind of an entry-level guide to universal design. So there's a QR code. If you want, it just takes you to our website, which has it available for free. There's way more in-depth guides that they'll talk about as well, but this is a great starter if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about it and believe that universal design matters. This can be a way for you to kind of tiptoe in, learn the basics, and go from there. And then real quick, I shared this story in a previous session too, but the point of all of this is that folks with disabilities, when they have what they need from the housing, can thrive. So this is an example of Jenny, and she was really isolated. She couldn't even use all the parts of her home before. We were able to get her into a place that was universally designed, and now she is connecting with community. She's having that full life that everybody wants. So the end of my part is just to say that it truly is possible, and when we have great ideas like what's up here, the sky's the limit. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Paul.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh yeah, that seems to be working well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jennifer, that was fabulous. So my name is Paul Burgess. I'm the Executive Director for Fourth Plane Forward. Fourth Plane Forward is a place-based development organisation based over the river in Vancouver, based in central Vancouver. What I'm going to do is just to give you a little bit of background about who we are, what we do, and then really talk about housing and why housing, and then sort of talk about the case study that we're here to look at and talk through with Access Architecture about the work that we're doing together to bring accessible, affordable housing to some of our community members in Vancouver. So I'll go through that. Fourth Plane Forward, our mission is accelerating equity for our community. We've been about since 2017, and we were created as a city initiative. Back in 2017, there was an action plan was undertaken in the geographical area that we're based in by the City of Vancouver to understand the equity issues along the corridor and to really start thinking about what can be done there. So that was 2015. A plan was undertaken by Masters of Urban Planning students from PSU, and they put together a 5-point plan, and those plans were really looking at transportation and the lack of, and the need for business technical assistance for the area, the need for safety and good safe streets for the community, and also placemaking and beautification of the area. And so the way they went about that was really looking deeply at transportation. So there was bus rapid transportation was provided along the corridor, and at the same time being able to actually deliver a lot of the priorities for the community. They felt the best way to do that was to create a non-profit, and so Falls Paying Forward was created as that non-profit. So we are an independent 501c3, although we do have contracts with the City of Vancouver. We have CDBG contracts, and we also run a building for them, and we've always maintained that independence. We work with around about, the area that we work in has about 21,000 folks, 5 neighbourhoods, and about 40% of our population are from global majority communities. So we have a very, very diverse community, the most diverse in Clark County. But again, it's also the most underserved community across Clark County as well. So really our role was to start doing programs in that community. We started off doing in around about 2018, 2019, starting to do business technical assistance for the area, also a lot of murals along the corridor, and some events as well, so multicultural events and small programs along the corridor. Obviously, COVID comes along and does its thing and changes the paradigm along the corridor. So we become very much an organisation that's helping get federal funding out into the community. So we put about $800,000, $900,000 of funds into the small businesses along the corridor to help them keep afloat, whilst also doing that technical assistance piece, as well as doing a lot of vaccination work as well. So really delving into the community, really help as an organisation build the trust for the community as to what we're doing. And so that really sort of lent itself to us being that place-based organisation, really focusing along the corridor. We're also very sort of grateful for the coalition that was set up behind us. So we were created to become the backbone organisation of the area. That coalition behind us comprised of the City of Vancouver, Clark County Public Health, Vancouver Housing Authority, Workforce Southwest Washington, Vancouver Public School District, and a couple of others as well, who really helped inform our strategic process and overview of where we were going in the long term for that sort of process for us. So their strategic ideal for us was looking at housing, economic development and safe streets. So we came out of that back end of COVID, so sort of about 22, 23, and started really thinking about strategically what do we do as an organisation and where are we moving to for longevity. So we've been building our programs up slowly over the past 2 or 3 years. We do a lot of micro business development, a lot of community development block grant funding. We have about $400,000 a year that we put out and utilise for that, do lots of technical assistance, provide business grants and those things. We also manage the Falls Paying Forward, which is a co-working space, event space and commissary kitchen that's owned by the City of Vancouver, but we're the operating manager for that. And above that is 106 affordable housing units that's managed and owned by the Vancouver Housing Authority. We've also recently set up a lending agency through funds from Washington State Commerce, with about $650,000 worth of loan capital funds available for businesses along the corridor and wider Clark County. And we also really delve into climate adaptation as well. We do a lot of work on what that looks like with air quality, food security, and emergency preparedness for bad weather events. We also do a number of other programmatical works on building community. We have fiscal sponsorship for small organisations as well. And a big part of all of this really is the work that we do with the global majority. So very much focused on our BIPOC community members, thinking very much about how we are culturally congruent for the work that we do. So you look at all of the programs that we run, and they're very much informed by the community who we work with and the staff that work with us as well. We very much focus on our community and represent our community. And so I think it's really important to note that as an organisation, we are shaped by the communities that we serve. Most of our work is done bilingually, and we have a large number of Hispanic workers. We also do a lot of work with our Hispanic community. We focus very much on the Black community as well, and the Indigenous population along the corridor. So very much working towards those community members. And we've been doing a lot of trust-based work through our fiscal sponsorship work, really working very closely with CBO partners. So whether that's the Chukis community and working with their leaders, working with the Vietnamese community. So we've spent a long time really building out that trust and building programming that's very understanding of that and very culturally congruent and trauma informed, and ensuring that we're really working with those communities. And so that's really been a big part of the work that we do, and we continue to do that. We've now recently transitioned, so we have been a business district association for Central Vancouver, and a really key goal for us was really transitioning into a community development corporation, and that's been a real push for us. The lending agency has been a big piece of that, and so the next step for us is housing, and that was that longer term process that we were looking at. And so why housing development? There are some critical things going on for housing development for us. The one key thing from my board has always been, sustainability for playing forward. If we're a place-based organisation, there's not huge sums of funds out there for this type of organisation. So how do we ensure the longevity of the organisation and stability for our residents along the corridor? And so moving into housing and housing development is a real key aspect for the longevity of the organisation. And really, there's some opportunity for us out there as well, and so really trying to take that opportunity as it comes. Along the corridor, there's been some key factors. The City of Vancouver was allocated $32 million through the American Rescue Plan Act, so ARPA funding. They allocated $25 million of that to the corridor, really with the intent of really having a good positive development impact along the corridor. That money is starting to come through now, so we really want to be there to make sure that money is used effectively and work with the city to do that. There's also the Fourth Lane Community Commons. It's the first asset that the community has seen along the corridor. The commissary kitchen, the co-working space and the event space, that had a really solid impact over the past year and a half. We've seen last year we had 11,000 people come through the door, and this year our count for July was 11,000 people. And so we've got a huge amount of people coming through the door, providing resources for the community. The commissary kitchen has 50, 60 active users, generating a lot of revenue, a lot of income for business owners along the corridor. And so really trying to delve into that as well. And then the third piece of the pie, the sustainability along the corridor. The City of Vancouver has their operations centre along the corridor. It's about a mile away from the Fourth Lane Community Commons. It's a 16-acre site, and they're mothballing it, and they're moving their operations centre further north. They own that plot of land. It's 16 acres, and it's ripe for development. And we want to be there for that. It's critical for our community that we're there for that. We know that the City of Vancouver is really progressive in how they're looking at housing and other developments along the corridor, and we want to be there for that and be part of that. And so that really led us into why housing and what are we doing. We partnered a lot with a lot of organisations, as I said earlier on, and really thinking for us about who are we serving, who are we best placed to serve as that organisation who works very, very closely with our BIPOC community. We have very close ties with a number of organisations who work with folks with disabilities, and so it made real sense for us. We have some subject matter experts that work with us. We have some really strong friends and community, and so our thinking was that this is the way that we should start our journey into housing, is to really think about how we can work with those who are really most affected by the lack of housing. And so that really took us to working with Access Architecture and trying to work out how we can do that. And so the project that we started around about a year and a half ago, and it's the Fruit Valley Commons. It's based down in Fruit Valley, which is just off Fourth Lane Corridor in Vancouver. It's not within the geographical location that we're based. Really hard to find places to develop along the Fourth Lane Corridor. There's not a whole heap out there, certainly in our price range as well. But the Fourth Lane Commons was a fabulous opportunity for us. It's an old site. It has about 10 units divided into 18 duplexes. I'm terrible. In English, I forget the vernacular over here. Duplex, is that the right word? Sorry, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I overcomplicate things. So we found this, and we started working on this project here. And essentially, it was built in 1971. It has about 50% vacancy rate at the moment. It's available to be sold. So the goal is for us to acquire that. So what it has is two 5-bedroom houses, 4 4-bedroom houses, 4 3-bedroom houses, and 8 2-bedroom units. So our initial plan was to renovate. So we're thinking, let's renovate. We'll take this, we'll renovate, and we'll work this out. We'll think about some group homes for folks with IDD. We'll work out some ways of working to put this together. And long conversations with Access Architecture came to actually there's potentially a better usage of this. obviously we could knock the whole thing down and build a pie, but that's way too much for us. We're sort of like, yeah, we're not going to go that. We don't want a $40–50 million development, nowhere near that. So we're really trying to get our feet wet and cut our teeth and work this out. So actually, along our conversations with Access Architecture, and Brendan and Alexis came up with the thoughts of let's rethink rather than just actually rehabilitating, changing them into different units. So we're now thinking in a much different way. We'd always wanted to have some of the units converted to a community space and an office space with service providers, so that was always there. So the goal was to convert, and remains to convert, the 2 5-bedroom houses into office space and community space. And so I've done this a little bit the wrong way around now, because I forget which way I set things up. But the 4 4-bedroom houses, our goal there is to provide student housing, mainly for the Clark College students, the local community college. We work very closely with Clark College, and so we're really talking to them about how can we provide housing for students there, because we know there's a huge issue with housing for those students. So those were the focus there. They are remaining as 4-bedroom houses, so there will be group houses for students from Clark College, those students that are at risk, that need housing, that are currently homeless. We're thinking about how we do that. The 4 3-bedroom houses we're converting into 8 1-bedroom apartments. The goal with those 1-bedroom apartments, 5 of those will be allocated specifically for folks with experiencing intellectual development disabilities. So the goal there is to make sure that they are available for those folks as said. And then the other houses will be available for other folks, seniors and other folks with disabilities as well. And then the 8 2-bedrooms, they will be 16 studio apartments. We hear, as Jennifer was saying, people want to live on their own. And so really, how are we providing that opportunity to do that? So the goal is to provide as much housing as possible that we can, that's available for individuals to live on their own and live independently. And as I was saying, 2 5-bedroom houses, one becomes a community space, and one is a supportive service advice. So that's our goal there. So we're creating an intentional community that has different access points for different people, but with services on site, and making sure we have services on site for folks. So our primary focus for our residents, individuals experiencing intellectual developmental disabilities, and seniors with disabilities, and Clark College students. But that said, we're also open to other residents, and that's not the finality of it. We're really open to that. The key for us is, as we've been working with Access Architecture, is to make sure that all of these units are accessible, fully accessible to everybody across the board, so people can live in place, they can age in place, and that's really critical, so that everybody has. And we've got some great partners. It's been a really interesting process for us. We've never been a housing developer before, still learning, working really closely with a number of different organisations. Community Foundation have been seminal in helping us with pre-development funding to get this moving. First and Berg Foundation has also been really key in helping us get funding together. And we've also been able to win an award through Enterprise as well. A huge award, but enough to pay for staff salaries. So we've got some funding that's already in place. And obviously a big job for me is going out there and finding that additional funding. Yeah.
Are you, excuse me, are you developing it and managing it, or are you just developing it and then you'll have another management company? And then I have one more question.
Yeah, so for the management side of things, yeah, we're still trying to work out how we do that. And so we've got some support. So you'll see here service providers on here, Ashby Family Lead, and also Pasitos Gigantes, who will be working with to help us with folks with disabilities. And property management wise, we're not too sure. We're trying to work out what that looks like. But our goal is to be the developer rather than being that human services piece, because we don't have the experience and the capacity yet.
Okay, and my second question is, I know it's really probably too soon in the juncture, but thinking ahead, are you thinking that these will be market rate, or are you gonna get, are you hoping to get some kind of subsidy where you can offer them for a lower cost to seniors that are limited income, students, that type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll get to that in a couple of slides.
Okay.
But absolutely, yeah. Sorry, actually, yeah. The whole goal here is that affordability piece. So everything is under 60% AMI,
Okay.
and so we've been looking and working for those subsidies. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thanks for the question. Good point. And sorry, I missed that. But yeah, so going back to the partners, so we have some great partners. So we have a capacity building partner. So Corporation for Supportive Housing. We're on their Washington, Oregon cohort. So doing a lot of development, understanding, and learning for us because we need that. So really sort of opens that learning model and working out how we do things. So it's been great to work with the partners here to really help build that capacity for us. Also working with Washington agencies, so with the Developmental Disabilities Administration and also with ALTA as well, and with Clark County Public Health and their Developmental Disabilities team as well. So it's been really important for us to learn from that and sort of keep that learning going. And we'll continue to look for partners as well. And our service providers who have in-depth knowledge and understanding of disability, they've been really helping us with that whole process as well. So the cost, I guess, is a really important piece of this. So we're still working on that. We're still trying to build things together. The total cost for acquisition and rehab are around about $7.5 million, and that went up because we decided to move to the different model of having 28 units rather than just rehab. And we feel that we can do that, thinking about how we build that together through capital campaigns and grant funding, etc., etc. So we've secured about $700,000. That $1,000 is as important as the other $700,000, I guess. So we'll be applying for the Washington Housing Trust Fund, the combined trust fund for that. So doing with that this year. Looking at CHIP funding, the Dan Thompson account over in Washington State. The City of Vancouver has an affordable housing fund. It's not open for this year, but we're hoping to apply for that next year. And then there's a number of philanthropic dollars that we're looking at and capital campaigns. So whilst we're not fully there yet, I was thinking about giving you some numbers, but I'm still trying to build them out. But the Housing Trust Fund and the it looks at around about, I think, about $3.5 million thereabouts. And so we're capital campaigning around about $2 million, I think, over some time. But we'll be utilising an acquisition loan to purchase the property with the goal to build out that capital stack and to build out that capital campaign over the next 3 years to cover that and pay for that. So we're certainly working on that piece there. And our average unit cost is coming around about $250,000 per unit cost. So we work with a great GC who's done some really interesting work for us in putting that together as well. So it's been an interesting process to get there. And so our projected income. So the goal is to subsidise as much as we can. We have applied Section 8 housing vouchers, about 7 of those. For student housing, we're partnering with Clark College. They're going to help subsidise the funding so that we can keep the cost down as low as possible for those students. So we're working that out with Clark College. The 8 one-bedroom student apartments, looking for mixed subsidies on that, working with some foundations and some other folks to bring that subsidy together. And then with those 16 apartments, working with ALTA and the DDA to see where we can bring the funding in. So looking at, and then also renting out the office space as well. So trying to build that together, recognising that we do need to have, some funds available, operating funds for paying off mortgages, etc., etc. So working very closely with our development partner to build out that capital stack and understand where we're at with the numbers. But it's been a journey. We're still learning. So I'm not too sure whether we've got it 100% right yet. We're going to apply for everything. Working very close with organisations to make sure that we get the right services in the space. And the goal is to be very much congruent of our community. Working with Pasitos Gigantes, who are a Hispanic-led organisation. They work with a large number of folks out there with disabilities. Ashby Family Lead, who are a Black-led organisation. So really thinking about how we're serving those communities that we serve right now, and how we're being mindful of making sure that this space is designed for them. We want it to be a hub, so it's not just a space where people that live there can only access, but really thinking about how can other people access, making sure that that's available, the services are available, so we have people from across Vancouver and Clark County coming to access services as well. And our timeline, we're currently in pre-development at the moment. We're hopeful for acquisition at the beginning of next year. I think like at the beginning of this year I was thinking around about fall, but then it gets pushed back, usual stuff. So yeah, our goal is to acquire by around about Q1, Q2 of next year. We have about a 6-month build-out timeline, and then hopefully lease up around about Q4 at the end of next year is our goal. So yeah, I think that's all my stuff. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Paul. I'm going to give a brief overview of Access architecture, and then we'll get back to Alexis, who will go over some of the architectural design details of the Fruit Valley Commons project. And I'll probably go kind of quick through some of the slides to make sure we also have enough time for more questions at the end. So our mission is designing connected communities. That's kind of our North Star, and we really feel like connections are an important part of leading a healthy and happy life. And so our name Access is really about trying to use the platform and the privilege that we have to provide access for those which the current systems and structures do not serve adequately. So that's kind of a little bit about us and how we approach our work. This is our office in downtown Vancouver, across the river. We are a certified minority-owned business. We are also very committed to sustainability. And actually, we are currently getting a PV system installed on our building, which when it's done will power more than our office, and it'll actually, some of that leftover energy will go to offset low-income family households and their electricity bills. So our office is pretty excited to get that installed and up and running. We do a wide range of projects, anything from small commercial TIs all the way to dense urban infill projects. The common thread kind of being community-focused design and really kind of being intentional with our design decisions and informed by evidence-based practices and community input. We've got a kind of small but mighty team of 8 that have been together for a long time now, pretty much all since around the time. So having a core group that have been together for a while, we're able to take lessons learned from each project and apply it to the next one. And so I think that's been a really big benefit of kind of having a small but nimble practice. For this project specifically, there's the 4 project team members, so myself, Alexis, we had Amanda as a project manager, and Jackie as a job captain. So just kind of give you an idea of the number of people on a project of this size. How we work, so I kind of mentioned outcome-based design and community-rooted. We really try to look at feedback from post-occupancy evaluations of previously completed projects. We do research into white papers and peer-reviewed articles, and really try to inform our design decisions along the whole project process. Doing a lot of work with nonprofits, cost-effective design is always front and center for sure. We do a lot of community engagement work that ranges from helping our clients with their community engagement efforts to we can also completely facilitate community engagement efforts and have on projects. We definitely approach every project with a collaborative and kind of integrated teamwork process, and highly committed to equity and inclusive in contracting and the consultants that we use as part of our design work. Just some vignettes of us doing various community engagement work, sketches, etc. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Alexis, who will go over Fruit Valley Commons project, and it's very much in process, so you're going to see some working plans and sketches, but yeah.
Happy on the work, but yeah. All right. Okay, as Jennifer mentioned, there's not enough accessible housing on the market to support the amount needed for really anyone, but those with disabilities specifically. And individuals with disabilities, for individuals with disabilities, studies have shown that there are mental and physical benefits to accessible independent living. So that became a primary design driver for Workplace Forward and Access. As Paul mentioned, we really didn't want to do group housing. We really wanted to focus on independent housing and thinking about providing accessible units and also fully adaptable units. So as we go into specific units, if they don't look fully accessible, they can be adapted to be fully accessible. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Part of our design process always includes some form of community engagement. When we talked it through with Fourth Lane Forward, we really wanted to focus on our IDD units and our community buildings. So we had a virtual roundtable with a number of service providers and caregivers to better inform our design. This is the list of them. This is a screenshot of that fun meeting that I also ran. This was done towards the end of our schematic design phase, so about like 6 to 8 weeks into our initial designs, very much where we were in flex of what we were designing. There were a number of key takeaways, but a few that I'll point out mostly because they came up in our research quite a bit. And in this, we're thinking about fostering social connection in our community spaces, reducing isolation. We talked a lot about the appliance packages, so we'll talk about that when we get into our units. And then just flexibility in unit assignments, so not specifically doing studios or one bedrooms designated to seniors or IDD specifically. So as Paul mentioned, we kind of designed them both for both. There will be some specifically designated for one or the other, but depending on the needs or who applies, I think the idea is if there's a strong need for one or the other, we will allow one or the other to be able to live in those spaces. So yeah, this is the existing site plan. There are 10 residential buildings. We're increasing the unit count from 18 to 28. That has to do with a few things. One, when we started looking at making 2 of the buildings a community and services building, this area did get rezoned. So if we did that, and we affect any of the unit counts, we have to increase the unit count. So we have to do 28 units, that's like the minimum. So that has a number of challenges with fitting that many units in that many buildings, which we'll get into. But another big undertaking of this project is regrading the entire site so that all of the paths throughout the site are less than 5% of a pitch, and all of the paths to the front doors are no step entries, and we have a lot of new front doors. So everyone, regardless of physical ability, can navigate throughout the site, to the front door, to the communities building, to the services building. It's a very, very simplified version of our grading plan. But the whole thing needs to get regraded because we currently have steps at every single entry. And again, we're adding quite a few new front doors, but we want to make sure that everyone can get everywhere. That's a big part of universal design, and also a big focus of this project. And so that's going to be a big undertaking and a big expense that might not seem very obvious when you're like looking through the finished product, but is really important when you're experiencing the site as someone with disability or without a disability. So definitely something to highlight. Our general organization of the site is here. Paul went through it as well, so I'll just like quickly point it out again. The dark blue is our 2-bedroom units, so those are what I have is marked as senior housing, but those are really the studios. The lighter blue, teal color is IDD, so those are gonna be the 1-bedroom units. Our reddish color is the community building and the services building, and then the yellow is the student housing. The student housing both look into each other. We'll go into each of the units in a bit, but we'll first start talking about the community building. So, give me a second. Following our feedback from the virtual roundtable, and knowing we had an increased unit count, which means we were gonna have tiny units, we wanted to really be intentional about our community space. There wasn't gonna be a lot of space in your unit to be hanging out. So we wanted to think about what each of these different populations needed. And really we started to figure out that all of them had a lot of overlap in what they needed, right? They needed space to create community, they needed space to potentially host friends and family, they needed space to reestablish community if you're a student and you're moving into a new space, or if you are someone with IDD that's living on their own for the first time, or a senior that's trying to, again, focus on their independence. All those things are going to be things that you need to be able to focus on your community, right? So we really thought about what those could be, and we ended up with 3 main programs, which was the community lounge, the community kitchen, and a quiet space. We then looked at the existing 5-bedroom building that we were renovating, and tried to think of the sequence of spaces, where the front door was, what made sense is like the first space that you walked into, which really made sense to be the community lounge. We also added in the communal laundry in this space, and tried to think about what different levels of social opportunity we could have to, again, really focus on preventing isolation, and allow the ability to connect, but also connect at different levels. If you want to connect in a quiet space and you want kind of to be on your own, but still be able to like visually connect, cool. If you want to be able to socially connect because you're in the lounge, awesome. If you want to just do your laundry and get out, also cool. Whatever you need. That's kind of the general idea. So we don't want to just have one giant community room. We don't want to just have one like open kitchen to the community room. So that was our general thought. We really tried to focus on universal design opportunities. It's a really long list, I'm not going to read them all. But one thing, like the front door, we really try to do like power assist doors where we could, since obviously we have accessible walkways everywhere. So if you have an accessible walkway and then you can't get through the front door, what are we doing? Thinking about dimmable lights and adaptable spaces, clear wayfinding, those kinds of things. Natural materials where we could, calming color choices, all of that stuff. Trauma-informed design, universal design, all of that kind of mushed into one. So we'll go through each of the spaces, starting with the quiet space. The quiet space came about because we started to think about like students needing to study, or the want of like a shareable library, or then just like the need to like escape the noisier, more overstimulating spaces that are in the community spaces, right? Like the lounge. You need to get away for a second. So thinking about acoustic absorption and some seating, different seating types, and just the ability to get away. And then there's just in the corner, there's some of our finished ideas. Then there's the communal kitchen. Again, when we get into some of the units, we didn't do full stoves and ovens in all of the units. We did some cooktops and some microwaves / air fryers, which had to do with community feedback. We'll talk about a bit. So we wanted to still be able to provide a space that you could cook with, you know, a host, your family or caretaker or whoever. And so that was really important to us, as well as like, you know, food is such a connector, so we wanted to have that as an important space. One thing that's not great about this view is to your left that you can't see is an accessible work area. So there is accessibility in this space that you cannot see, but yeah. And then the lounge, which the thought of just being a very adaptable space, right? You can move all of the tables and chairs to the side. You can host yoga, you can host family, you can hang out with your neighbors, whatever the community ends up ultimately needing. I don't think we really intend to program it much as allow the community to program it once the community is in the space. So we're gonna go through each of the units. We're gonna have, on one side is the existing, and on the other side is the new. So for our 2-bedroom to our studio units, they were 2 units to 4, right? So there's a lot of things that we thought about with our senior housing. Some of it had to do with accessible hardware and roll-in showers. We really thought about aging in place. So we either have grab bars or we have blocking for future installation of grab bars. We have removable cabinets under the sink so that if someone moves in and they need that cabinet to be removed, they can. If in the future they need that cabinet to be removed because they develop a disability that requires that, they can. In general, we want all of these units to be able to be adapted to, in the future, if you need that, you can have it. There's, you know, spatial comfort control. All of our units, we're doing HVAC upgrades. All of the buildings have that. So everyone has their individual HVAC upgrades. One of the reasons why we ended up with these like kind of long studio layouts is that we really wanted each space to feel like distinctively different. So your sleeping space and your kitchen space feels different than your bathroom space, so you don't feel like you're sleeping in your kitchen, which sometimes happens in studio units. And you want your front door to feel different than the other person's front door, so if you can see the existing front door is on your left and the new front door is on your right. We also try to keep the plumbing generally in the same existing location, which is at this back area. Also trying to keep natural light in where bedrooms are. So studios are a little bit complicated always because there's not a lot of space. So trying to make the layout feel as spacious as we could and have as much space to turn around if you needed to. If you were in a wheelchair, as many places as you could were also an idea. For our 1-bedroom units. Similarly, it went from 2 units to 4 units. These also are either fully accessible or fully adaptable. We really wanted to promote independence because these are the ones that will be designated for IDD. We really wanted to focus on reducing clutter, so these have more closets. That's an important aspect for those that experience IDD. Accessible kitchen hardware similarly. These are true 1-bedroom units, so there's a clear separation between your social space and your private space. We really wanted as much natural light as possible in the bedrooms. That's how the bedrooms kind of got laid out in the locations that they did. Again, the plumbing, we tried to keep it in the general area that they were, so that's why the bathrooms are located where they are. And then the appliances, we'll talk about for this one, is where we have the 2-burner cooktop, which is, it's an induction cooktop, and then under the countertop we have the combination microwave air fryer. This came from very long conversation in our virtual roundtable about what the appliances we should provide in these units made sense for different levels of IDD. The idea being if someone shouldn't, for safety reasons, what should be allowed in those units. The thought being also you could remove the microwave if you needed to, if it didn't make sense for that resident to have that. And then again, the community room would be a space where they could then still cook, still be able to have access to that. I think again with the idea that, induction burners, good for seniors as well. Induction burner is good for everyone. My roommate also forgets the things are on the stove, so I don't think it has to do with age. Student housing, 2 units to 2 units. So this one really stays very similar. The biggest thing that we are adjusting in this is the core, so the middle area. We're adding an accessible bathroom and growing the kitchen because now it will be, instead of being a family, it will be for potentially separate people cooking at the same time. So we really wanted to make that as large as possible. Again, we're still upgrading the HVAC in this area, and outside we have bike storage added, those kinds of things. Climate controls located in the common space so that they can argue about that, but at least no specific person has control over it, I guess. That's the thought. This is one of the units that will have the full stove and oven and a full refrigerator. And then the services building. As 4.4 mentioned, they don't have a specific service provider in mind yet. So during our roundtable, we talked a lot about this building and just really wanted it to be open to whoever would potentially take it up. So as many offices and clinics or potential office or clinic spaces as possible. A conference room made sense, a staff lounge, and then expanding the existing bathrooms to be accessible. This is Brendan and my contact information if you'd like to contact us. And then our resources, Jennifer already mentioned Community Visions guidebook, would recommend. And then the other main inclusive design standards that we use often is from the Kelsey. So if you need another one, check that out. And now I'm going to pass it off to Brendan.
All right, thanks, Alexis. That is the presentation. So we're right on time for Q&A. If y'all have any questions, or if you don't, I have some in my back pocket, but yeah.
So earlier you posted a slide that had a maximum social security of like $943. What does that number mean?
What a great question.
What does that number mean? Because
Yeah.
that's not an average that anybody ever sees.
Okay, yeah, so that is what's called Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. So many people with disabilities, if they don't have a work record, or if they aren't using their parents' work record, SSI is their only opportunity for income.
Okay.
And so that is different than Social Security
Okay.
disability
But
income,
you had it
or
listed as
SSD.
SSI, so it was kind of
SSI, yeah,
confusing.
that's what it's called. And that's, yeah, about $1,000 a month.
Okay, so one of the other questions that kind of is lingering in the back of my mind is, what is the current admin cost for the project, ongoing for a project that's not even completely financed yet? How far are you guys into it as far as expenses? You've already designed buildings, you don't own them yet. What's your investment pre-construction?
Yeah, good question. So pre-development costs right now, I think we're running at about just shy of $200,000. Is what we're currently at, and that's not including staff time. So factoring
Because
staff
you
time as well.
obviously have to account for staff time. What is that? I mean, what's the running cost for administration on it?
For the current project, so I have a part-time staff member, and then myself as the sort of like the two key leads on the program. So essentially, it's our salaries, prorated combined for that. But we factor that in through funding that we get through the Community Foundation and other funds that we've got through. So that's how that's currently funded.
Okay.
All right, thank you, good questions. Others, yeah,
Oh,
sure,
you go ahead.
yeah.
Are you guys working with a development consultant or?
So the question is, are we working with a development consultant?
Yes, we are. So we're working with the Vancouver Housing Authority. They're our development consultant for the project. So yeah, we need somebody with some knowledge. So yeah, absolutely.
Hi, my name is Destiny. I'm from Rooted Homes. We're the community land trust for Central Oregon. My big thing that we've run into when it comes to creating inclusive spaces is either we have parents of IDD adults that are setting up housing for them so that they are prepared and they have a community when they pass away, or we have now projects that are starting to have ADA set up from the beginning, and internally I don't feel like staff are very trauma informed as to how we deal with situations, how do we go about making sure that if somebody is in a home that they're not ADA safe, or down the road they no longer have their sustainable parent or guardian, what does that look like, and are there resources or builds that we can move towards to get those families into?
Sure. So happy to talk in more detail because I think some of this is different community to community. But since you're referencing Central Oregon, so there are developmental disability services that we can talk into detail about what that's like in Bend in those areas. I think another thing that is really, in terms of as you think about longevity, that is happening more and more is that remote supports are increasingly becoming an option. So like some of the folks that we are working with are using a combination of sensors, Ring doorbells, even Alexa is actually helping people to stay in their homes as their accessibility needs and as their disability needs keep changing. So there's actually a lot of options with technology that can help people to, so for example, we have some people who are getting older and really don't want staff there overnight, because who wants somebody like babysitting you if you don't have to? And so they're using some technology to mitigate that. So there are a lot of opportunities. Again, we can talk about details related to disability services, but they do exist. And I think that's one of the things that's important, is that the expectation is not that the housers are providing those disability services. That's what's on us as disability service providers.
Hey, I really appreciate you guys going into detail on the plans and everything, and the site sounds like you've done you're going to be doing extensive regrading. Was there other discussions around how that community extends into the site itself? Because I saw there was like quite a bit of parking. Is that all planned to stay? Was that part of the virtual roundtable? Just kind of more curious about the site itself.
Yeah, so all of the parking will stay. That's part of, required, we need that much parking. And then we did look at all of the sidewalk that had to be looked at based off of our pre-app. We did a pre-app with Vancouver to make sure that we were good to go on everything that we were assuming based off code. And one of the things was going through and making sure that all of our sidewalks were fully accessible and all that, so we walked through. So everything connected directly to the site is accessible. Past that, we don't really have much control over. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Just to piggyback on that, some other site-related considerations. So the existing buildings, there's no like system for trash collection. So there's just a bunch of individual trash bins, kind of like at everyone's front doors. So we're consolidating that into a single trash enclosure. But as you probably saw in the site plan, there's not a lot of extra space. It's a pretty tight site. But I do know, I think one of the goals is to have kind of a community garden build as part of the project. So that would, I think, probably happen by the community and office buildings, because that's really the only area that we've got a decent chunk of space to do that. But the rest of the site is pretty much taken up by circulation.
What stage are you guys in design right now?
I think we're going in for permit like this week. So, that stage.
Yep.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Do you have any seniors that are students? Or seniors with IDD that are students? I assume they might live in an IDD house, but what would you do in it? Would really depend on where they want to live, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, so very much open to a senior with IDD who's a student is as welcome as a student, is as welcome as somebody with IDD. So yeah, very much that sort of approach. So yeah, and we want to work with them for sure. So I think yeah, the goal is really to be as inclusive as we can be, and ensuring that that it's accessible and open to everybody in the community for sure.
But as far as like who's going to be there, we haven't hasn't been any identification of like what population or people will be renting those spaces, right?
Not as of yet. Yeah.
So my question is similar. How you decided to call which units IDD versus senior, and why you would choose to do that versus whoever comes along could take what unit matches them?
I mean, there's a bit of a capital reason, but I think it really, they could be either. There are some things that we thought about a bit when it came to designing one-bedroom units versus studio units for people with IED, in terms of the ability to move from a social space into a private space that is generally important, which you don't really get in a studio because you just don't have separate spaces. But we did design them both very, very similarly, with the thought that they could be either, that you could have a senior in one or the other, or someone with IDD in one or the other. And that's generally the intent. And I think, other than if you had a specific fund for one or the other.
Yeah, and there's a maximum maximum number of units that we could have that were specifically for IDD community members, and so within that 28 unit, 5 is the maximum that we could have. So we want to make sure that the maximum is available for that community. And I think and also like we sort of focused on the 1-bedroom apartments. That was just with conversations with folks, and I think it's not set in stone. It really is about what the need is, but we kind of we have to have some form of like fiscal focus on where we're putting things, and so it's been like that's been our focus as the 5 1-bedroom units, because that's what made more sense for us. But very open to to how that looks. But a key consideration is that institutionalization and not wanting the space to be institutionalized, and that's really critical for us. And so that was a big piece about how we find that mix of students and seniors and other folks, and being open to other people in the community, and really trying to find that right mix. So it's flexible.
My question was about how you intend to market the community to potential homeowners or renters. And then I had a question about this recently. Did you determine that the 4 1-bedroom units or the 1-bedroom units would be more specifically for IDD based on affordability or based on ability?
So the first question, the marketing piece. So we'll be working with community-based organisations to make sure that we're speaking with the populations that they sort of work with, and so our goal is to really sort of work very closely with community-based organisations to get the marketing out to those community groups. And then with regards to the second question,
It was about, I believe I understood you saying that it was the 1-bedroom units that you intend to make available for the IDB community.
Yeah.
Why the 1-bedroom? Was there a thought behind it? Was it because of the affordability of those units based on the kind of incomes that they have to live on? Or is it based on their ability, their physical ability, or?
I think it was really, so part of it was conversations with community groups about what the preference is. And so it was more about preference for the community over a specific thing. So when we were talking with ULSA with regards to what their preference is studio apartments. And so we sort of thought, that's where we'll focus. So for those seniors living with disabilities, ULSA, if we're thinking about subsidies and looking at how we can bring that to bear, then those studio apartments were really a key piece. But talking with Clark County disability folks and other folks, that it felt appropriate. So rather than it being sort of that affordability piece, and I think we're trying to think very broadly about that affordability piece and how we do that. And so that this is like the key challenge, obviously, is that affordability piece, and not wanting to price anybody out, really thinking about that 60% and below AMI and how are we doing that. And so that's been the consistent conundrum, and how are we funding things, and how are we building out that subsidy level to be able to do that. So to a certain extent, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So the student housing, we're lucky that we should be getting sort of 100% fair market rate for the student housing through subsidies. So I'm going to take that 100% and utilise that against the costs of what's going on in those other units. And so really trying to be as bare bones as possible, but recognising operational costs, etc. But anywhere where I can get subsidies that will enable lower AMI for other folks, that's sort of where we're sort of trying to manage that. And so that's sort of, so it's not really been that affordability piece. We're trying to do it so it's for the community organisations and the community members. That's what their need is. So we work to the community members' need rather than what our needs are. We'll see how that goes.
Well, so do you have unit preference for IDD and preference for seniors and preference for students?
Yeah, so the 4-bedroom house is a preference for students. So
and if you don't fill it out, then what happens if they're open to your fair market, fair housing, they're open really to anyone, right?
Only in so much as because there's only, so what we're also trying to do with the capital stack is, so there's a certain number that so say like we go with the affordable housing funds through the City of Vancouver, we have to maintain those units at 50% AMI or below, right? We have to do that. So recognising that we do that. So what What the plan is to have numbers off the top of my head, I can't remember, there's around about 7 units that will be fair market rate. So we're looking for that philanthropic dollar that helps us cover that rather than going through the Housing Trust Fund or the Affordable Housing Fund. So we've got that mix, so we're able to offer that. But also knowing that where Fruit Valley Commons is and the levels of rent in Fruit Valley, we're looking at 60% AMI anyway. We're not going to be hitting 100% fair market rent. Completely recognise that. But yeah, so we're trying to manage that capital stack in the way that we're able to offer out so that we don't fill. But I don't think we're going to have a problem filling. I don't think. I hope, from conversations that we've had with large numbers of folks, we should be there on keeping a decent 95% occupancy rate going. I hope. Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a property that was developed for people with IBD, vacancies, and the community partner we had, this is in Yaco County, no longer in service, so I don't know who to reach out to find people. Are you?
Let's chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we probably have time for one more question. Yeah, in the back.
I'll try to be quick. I'm curious if there are, from like the land use and permitting side, any barriers that you ran into that you think, from a planning perspective, could be sort of help you move through more easily, or on the flip side, if there were sort of incentives or things that cities did that help out this as well.
Well, I would say there were quite a few barriers. We went in for a pre-app and then we suddenly had to upgrade the sewer system and potentially needed to add another unit based off zoning and quite a few other things.
I would say these are all like more having to do with the fact that we're renovating
Right.
existing
That's what I was
property
about to
versus
say.
like anything, IDD or student
Right.
housing or senior housing specific.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, this is because we're renovating. So renovating is fun. So all of those things happen. That being said, some of those things we talked through with the city and explained. We're doing affordable housing. We're doing affordable housing for these populations. They were okay with some of those things changing. We are still upgrading the sewer system. So not everything went away. And those are very costly and I mean, we had to talk through how then we were gonna afford to do that, but I would say there is always some negotiating a bit with the city when you're doing affordable housing and when you're doing affordable housing for specific populations, to say we can't afford to do that, especially when it's renovation.
I will say one thing that comes to mind that's maybe a little more universal and accessible design specific is with site design, if it's an existing facility, we have a lot more pathways and ramps, which then impacts your impervious surface area. So for us, that triggered the need to treat stormwater. So if you're looking at an existing facility and you're adding a lot of extra impervious surfaces, that's something that you probably want to discuss with your local jurisdiction early on to make sure if it triggers anything that you're aware of that and that you're putting that into the project costs.
But I would recommend a pre-app. Talk to the city early to figure out all those things, either, again, negotiate it or at least be aware of it, because then we were aware of it before we were going into permit and not at the point of permitting and then having an oh crap moment, so. And that was bad because it was sewer related, I shouldn't have said oh crap.
All right, well, thanks everybody.